Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome, I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today has motivated thousands of people to higher levels of performance in work and life. Experience as a social worker and educator, along with advanced degrees in human behavior, provides a firm foundation for her appreciation of the work we do and the challenges of life. Her previous book, The Transparency Edge: How Credibility Can Make or Break You in Business, was chosen by Fast Company magazine as a book of the month. She has coached over 3,500 leaders and is a fierce advocate for the sabbatical movement. Her upcoming book, The 60-Something Crisis: How to Live an Extraordinary Life in Retirement, will be published in July 2022. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Barbara Pagano.
Thank you, Julia. It's very nice being here.
Barbara, our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, so what took you so long to write your first book?
Well, I certainly took longer than 50. I had the first book published at 60. And the way that came about is through leadership development, where I was out helping leaders in organizations, speaking at leadership conferences, speaking at women's conferences. And that audience would come up at the end and someone would always say, "Where's your book?" So in the speaking business and in the teaching of leadership, there is a place for a book, but I couldn't seem to get it done. I tried getting up in the morning at 4:30 and 5 o'clock. That did not work for me, Julia. I tried fitting it in, but fitting it in amidst a very busy career, that didn't work for me either. So finally, my daughter came to me and she was perfect match. She was an award-winning business reporter at the Nashville Banner. So she was out doing the business beat and interviewing CEOs and CFOs. And she said, "Mom, I'll help you write this book if you want some help." Well, that was perfect. She said, "Bring me an outline." So I walked on the beach in Pensacola, Florida, got my outline together, brought it back to her. She read it. She looked at me and she said, "Mom, this sucks." And I said, "Oh." And she said, "If I'm going to write a book with you, it is going to be a very good book. So you go away and do this over." So Julia, I went away. I came back. She looked at a new outline, which was practically a new pitch and a new concept. And she said, "Okay, this is it." So we were able to get an agent, sell the book to McGraw-Hill. And the process was one of shutting down the business because, see, you already knew that I couldn't do two things at once. Shut down the business in November, wrote every day from 5 a.m. till 7 p.m, 7 days a week to meet the deadline. And we missed it by a week of January 19th. And that was a process for me that worked wonderfully. She called me at 5 o'clock every morning to make sure I was up. And, my husband came to me. We shut down for Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas Day. That was it. So that's where the book came from. The first book came from.
I love that your daughter was giving you homework.
Yeah, and if it wasn't right, it wasn't going to fly. So that was good. She's also was a big believer in an outline. And I was not quite the believer in an outline. And I kept thinking just lists of things would work fine. And so I learned a lot from her. I learned how to be a better writer. I learned how to interview. I learned how to I still can't take 3,000 words and make them 1,200, but she can.
Well, it's great to have a partner, especially a daughter who can work with you. I love that partnership between mother and daughter.
Yes, and I miss that a little bit in writing the second book, because I do think that if you can find a partner to write with, and you both have a skill set that makes a really good book, wow, that is just a great experience.
And I think in the business world, especially, that book is your business card. It is a calling card, just like you found out in that meeting. They expect you to hand them your ideas, your advice in book form.
Yes, and it was a great calling card to advance the business even further in terms of getting the keynotes in some of the audiences and in the top levels of organizations. So that worked very, very well for us. Plus, I'm a big believer in solid content. So I think that if you have solid content and you're a good above average writer, and you can get a good editor, then you're fine. You're going to be proud of that book.
Well, Barbara, you are certainly writing to our authors over 50 and many of our listeners. I love this description of your book. Readers will learn how to pursue desires, not roadmaps, to increase self-confidence and master risk-taking, and will discover the power and potential of investing in themselves at this time of life. That is a pretty bold and confident statement. Please tell us more.
Well, you're talking about the book that comes out in July. And that one I did not co-write with Elizabeth. I wrote on my own a different kind of experience, a very good one. But what I'm saying there, Julia, is that many of us think that the last third of our life is going to be absolutely glorious, and we're not going to have to do anything to make that happen. And I got very lost in retirement. So when I was 65, and I hope your audience realizes now that this second book is coming out and I am 75 years old. So that's the reason I love your podcast, right? So I failed at retirement. I didn't think that there was a book on my horizon. But that failure and coming out of that transition and the work that I did in terms of understanding exactly you have to understand that I have advanced degrees in human behavior. So I had already planned the perfect 40-year-old midlife crisis, but this one was very much of a stunner for me. And so I got lost. I had to find my way out. And after I understood much better about that piece of life that happens in the middle of your 60s and the fact that you have 30 more years to live, that became important to me that no one should have that experience. So basically, I wrote the book that I wish someone had given me. If you had given me that book at 65, I would have understood much, much better and had a clearer idea of exactly what the future, what I needed to investigate in the future to have a life that was really going to be extraordinary.
I think those of us who are at this age have determined that we don't want to ever stop working. We value work, and we don't want to just sit around and stare at the ocean all day. That's not how we were brought up to believe that what we should be doing with our lives.
I think that you're so right about that.
What are some of the tips or advice you would give to those in this 60s crisis?
Well, first, I want you to understand that, when you talk about looking at the ocean for 30 years, I looked at the ocean for 3 years with a cup of coffee every morning, staring out and saying, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And I had choices. Many of us do. I also have good health. Many of us do. And I started with what many people start with, and that is, well, I just need my purpose. If I find my purpose, then I'm going to be great. Well, that didn't work well for me. Okay. I could not find the purpose that would encompass everything that I wanted to do in life. So then the other avenue that many of us are told, well, just find your passion. Okay. Well, I have a lot of passions. So trying to narrow it down in those two arenas just did not work for me at all. So I needed a new approach and a new way of looking. And I think that what I didn't understand in my 60s and and I say this to people, is that this is just not one transition. This is just not retirement. This is now a transition to another decade called the 70s. And the 70s can sneak up on you. And some people say, some experts say that is the hardest transition to make, from 60 to 70. So you have the 70s that are going to sneak up on you. You have this magic that happens at 65 when everyone expects you to retire. And they're all saying, well, what's next? And you have no clue really what is next. So it turns out that it's really a string of transitions, that it's not just a retirement issue. But when you say people are working, yes, we are. And the old model of retirement didn't fit me. Did I want to work like I worked in my 40s? No. Did I want to do what I'd already done? Did I want to do leadership coaching and just take that and move it into my 60s and 70s? No. So it's a much bigger transition, is what I would tell people that you have to prepare for. And the good news for me, because of leadership coaching, I was able to go back and interview many of the leaders that I coached who had retired. And they were so instrumental in my thinking, because these are very smart, successful people who said, Barbara, I didn't do that well. I shut the door. I went into retirement. If I had it to do over again, I would have thought a lot more about what I wanted to do in those years ahead. So there was every reason to write the book. And there was every reason to understand that there was an audience out there that was going to struggle just like I had.
Well, how is this publishing journey for the second book? Because many of us are writing our second books. How did it compare to the publishing journey for the first book?
Well, I knew that I knew that this book was going to be published. I just didn't know how. I had been out of the publishing business for over 10 years. So I knew the landscape had changed enormously in terms of the number of large publishers and the hybrid publishers. So I had to learn a lot about what was going on. But I knew that I wanted to give it my best shot in terms of finding an agent. So one of the things, the way that I found the first agent was exactly the same way that I found the second agent, and that was at a writers' conference. I love writers' conference where you pay $20 and you're able to sit 15 minutes with an agent, and you have to learn how to pitch your idea, which means that you have to really narrow down your market and why this is important and why you're the person to write it. So the arena of finding the agent was the same, but I also just knew that if that didn't work for me, I would self-publish. So it was I would think it was just much calmer the second time. You know, I had my book proposal. I'm going down this road. If that road didn't work out, I was going to go down this road. So it was just, I don't know, just a different kind of journey.
I call that speed dating at the agents'
conferences. Oh, you love it? You love it? And I tell writers that I meet, if you have a chance, whether one's close to you or whether you have to travel, the first writers' conference was in Maui. Mm-hmm. And so that was a big investment of time and energy. And I remember looking at my husband saying, it was over Labor Day. I remember looking at my husband saying, I'm sorry, I have to go. Okay. So, and then the second writers' conference was in San Miguel that I was successful at, but I was living in San Miguel. So that was a bit easier. But writers' conferences where agents are there and they're able to say, it works, it doesn't work, it needs this, it needs that, and you meet other writers. I just think those are such wonderful communities for many different reasons.
I think so too. And I think we find our tribe there to receive so much generous information from other writers. I think we're a great group to share and to give advice and to network. And you can always pick up the phone and call one of those people that you meet at these conferences or writers' retreats, and they're always willing to give you a blurb or to tell you what works or doesn't work in your manuscript.
I would agree with you, and I think the investment is worth your time, and it's worth your money, and it's worth going up to someone you don't know and saying, I heard you say this, can you tell me a little bit more? And just the community of it all. I think writing is pretty much a solo endeavor. Even when I was writing alone in my office, Elizabeth was writing in her office. We were still putting it together at the end of the week, but otherwise you're sitting alone writing. And so community becomes very, very important.
Well, I know you haven't published yet, but I know that these publicists give you a lot of homework to do before the book launches. So can you tell us what you've been working on as far as marketing or publicity in advance of the book?
Mm-hmm. I will tell you that I spent a lot of time and energy getting my testimonials. So that was important to me. I knew the process from the Transparency Edge. So I knew that people were busy. I knew that you had to make this as easy for them as possible. But I spent a lot of time and a lot of energy looking at the right people for this book. And you're sitting down and you're thinking, oh, golly, I'm going to have to ask. I'm going to have to do an ask, right? Because you're really asking for a favor. Do you know that everyone I ask, except for one person who is a professor who is very busy in a project, everyone said yes. That was a huge aha to me, that people that sometimes did not know me, but I love their work. I had been following their work, and I asked them for a testimonial, and they said yes. So I want all of your listeners to know that that is a process that was worth my time and energy. And I got a great forward to the book because I went out and found the person that I thought would be good for that, had a list, and he was the first person I asked, and he said yes. So the generosity of people who will do that for you. And that became important to me, Julia, because I read those. When I pick up a book, I read what other people have said about this book. And so even though it's not a requirement to do that, I made a lot of investment in that. So that's one way to publicize your book as it comes out, but it's also a way that you can put those testimonials on your website or wherever you're advertising your book. Right now, we're looking at the cover just went up on Amazon. The audio has to come out at the same time that the book comes out. And the audio was sold to another company, not the publisher. So the coordination of podcasts like this one, writing an article, I have to fit that in the amount of time and energy that I want to work. And I'm certainly the difference in the work for the book, for the first book and the second book, is in the first book, I think I was willing to work 60 to 80 hours a week. And I can tell you that life is just not that way for me anymore. I have a certain amount of time. I know that I'm good at 9 o'clock in the morning till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And after that, it's just kind of over. And I want to get out and play pickleball or take a walk or do something else, play with the grandkids. So the difference in time and energy to promote the book is very, very different. Now, that doesn't please your publicist sometimes because they want you to do everything. So I'm picking and choosing and fitting it into the way that I want to lead my life.
Well, I say good for you. And I think one difference too is you don't have that daughter giving you homework and keeping you on track as much as you did on that first book.
That's true. I have to do that by myself.
Yes, that is wonderful and high praise and a great testimony to you to have so many people want to give you blurbs about your book. You probably were networking and paying it forward to them, and they want to come back and showcase your work as well. So that's another reason for us
to network and do that. That's absolutely correct. But also know that some of these people were complete strangers. But I knew their work. I knew their work fit in support of my work. So there was a dotted line connection, not just, somebody famous that would write something. So I think that was important.
Yes. Why don't you read a few paragraphs for us so that we can hear your tone and voice in the book?
Are you turning 60 soon? Are you a 60-something? If so, you are being seduced by the idea that the years ahead will be your best and you won't have to do a thing to make it happen. Looking back, you'll understand that you just faced down or got sucked up into one of the biggest transitions of your life, and you didn't even see it coming. You'll wonder why no one waved a yellow flag to try to warn you that you weren't just facing one major life change, but a string of them, all unmarked and ready to change the shape of your life. Could a retiree at least have whispered in your ear to tell you how much they regret that they walked out of the door after the retirement party into a space where they didn't know what they wanted? Is this a crisis? only if you don't want to finish your life knowing that you've done your best.
Okay, listeners, I think that spoke to every one of us, and I think we all need to rush out and get that book as soon as it publishes. We're going to be watching
great.
for
I love
it.
hearing that. This is a great market for, there's 10,000 of us turning 60 every day. Our lives are getting longer. The old model doesn't fit anymore. Yes. We want to work financially, for community, for relevance. And I think that many people want to write as part of this journey. And I can get very excited about that.
Well, that's why we started the podcast. And I have just been amazed at how many people are writing in retirement, how many doctors and attorneys and people with MBAs and, just from all walks of life are writing now. And it must be like swimming. I think we can do it the rest of our lives because I'm interviewing people in their 80s and 90s, and they are writing beautiful work.
That's so exciting to hear. And one of the things I would want your listeners to know is that right now it's book launch time. Okay. It's book promotion, book launch. And I miss the book writing. I miss getting up in the morning and sitting down and knowing that what I have to do is to finish chapter 4 and chapter 5 is next. That structure was so simple to me. And now I get up and I have all these things and I have to pick and choose. So the structure of writing, just when you start out with a blank page, and then now granted, on some days it didn't work. Okay, just didn't work. And I learned that if it didn't work, then just go take a walk. Just forget the whole day. It's not going to work. And I would go away. And that was my style of doing it. But I think that writing can give such a feeling of accomplishment. And even if you have to go back, and which most of it's do, and kind of tear through it again and keep what you want, just that whole idea of sitting down and putting your thoughts down, it's just a wonderful experience. And it's so wonderful that so many of people are doing it.
I totally agree. I love the structure. I love pretending I'm walking into work again and sitting down at my desk and having something defined to do every single day. So I definitely agree with you about that. In your late 50s, you and your daughter Elizabeth set out on a 6-month sailing adventure on your 42-foot sailboat Revival. Together, you sailed alone for 2,000 miles. We have to hear about this 6-month boat trip, just you and your daughter on that voyage. I want to know what you learned about yourself and each other.
We were novice sailors. That means we did not have a lot of experience. Elizabeth went to sailing school for a week in Fort Lauderdale, and I flunked out of navigation school. So the thing that you learn is that people don't want you to go. Okay. They say, you can't do this. You don't know what you're doing. But I sat down with my husband and I said, I just want to see if I can do this. And the reason for that, Julia, was that life was successful. I wasn't out of my comfort zone. I could do the coaching or the speaking with my hands tied behind my back. I hadn't stretched in a long time. And I looked at that boat and said, I just wonder if we can push this little boat through the water. So my husband and I had cruised in the BVI for 20 years, but I had docked the boat maybe twice. We had never been night sailing. It was right after 9/11, so the calendar was kind of getting really quiet. And I just turned to my daughter and I said, do you want to go and see how far we can go? And she was coming out of a relationship that had been going on and off for a long period of time. She was in a different place than I was, but she said, yeah. So we did do that. We took off from Pensacola Bay and sailed alone for over 6 months. And it was a wonderful experience to have 24/7 again with your grown child. We did not declare a captain because neither one of us knew any more than the other one. We had books on navigation and knots, and people helped us along the way. It was scary at times, but we did it.
That is just amazing to me. I'm just totally amazed by that. And I'm so happy that you left the boat both loving each other and still being mother and daughter, because it could have gone so wrong, Barbara.
The news from Elizabeth's friends in the beginning was, you're getting on a boat with your mother. Are you out of your mind? And the news from my friends was, you're getting on a boat with your daughter. Are you? So anyway, yes, you learn something every day. Well, what I learned, Julia, was how exciting it is not to know all the answers. Okay. So we had to make decisions every day that we really didn't have a lot of experience with. So we learned something new every day. 2 women on a boat, we had to rig it differently than it was usually rigged, because we didn't have the upper body strength to do that. And the cutest thing about the whole thing is that people wanted us to take a gun, and I refused. And so instead we took a blow-up man. So we had a blow-up man that we could bring up and put in the cockpit in case, people, and we did it once because it was early in the morning, and we needed to let the other people know that, yeah, we did have a big, strong guy on the board, and here he was right here. So anyway, yeah, we were still, it was a great experience. Glad I did it. But one of the reasons was, in the very beginning, was I just wanted to see if I could do it. And I think that that applies to writing sometimes, or publishing a book.
It certainly does. Any of the challenges in life that you can accept and greet it head on, and know that you can do it and come out on the other side.
Right. Daniel Pink just published his book in February on the power of regret. And he had the World Regret Survey of 150 countries and 15,000 people writing in what they regret. And it's no surprise to us that what we regret is not what we did that didn't work out, but what we didn't do. And so that, yeah, I'm willing to look at something and say, how am I going to feel if I don't try? And if that doesn't feel right to me, then whether it's publishing a book at 70 or whether it's 75 or 80, I don't want that regret.
Well, Barbara, I think you have certainly inspired us today. I think that's a great place to end with your advice for writers and people over the age of 50. And we just look forward so much to your new book coming out so that we can learn even more and challenge ourselves even more. Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend, and check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing, and remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.